Manchester City could make a move for him this window. But what about Liverpool? A deal to bring the Crystal Palace captain to Anfield stalled, of course, on deadline day, you may remember, in the summer. And Palace are now expected to consider offers below their original asking price of £35 million.
There is no manager in the world that would tell you, oh, I'm completely happy that I only have 2 centre-backs available. But you have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we've signed an unbelievable, talented player with Giovanni Leone, who will be back next season. And this is the way this club works. And as much has been said about our spending last summer, it's not that there is no limitation on us spending. So we have to do smart things, and this club has always tried to do smart things to keep up with the teams we want to compete with, and that's not any difference now.
There were reports this week that Manchester City are looking to sign Marc Guehi this month, and in September you did say that the club were ultimately close to signing him. I just wonder, is he someone that you'd like the club to go back in for this season, and how much of a blow would it be to miss out on someone who was a big target?
Now, Vinny is always asking the first question, and usually I expected this question from him, but he now knows that I never talk about transfers in public, let alone talking about a transfer from maybe another club. So yeah, he after 1.5 years now knows it's no use of asking that question, but you can try, but my answer is always the same. We don't talk about players that are not ours.
Right, before I talk to you two gents about this, we're going to go to Ben Ransom, who's at the Etihad for us. Ben, lovely to see you as always. You spoke, actually, to Pep Guardiola yesterday. Did you get the sense that City are going to do this business?
Yeah, look, they're in a predicament, aren't they, Manchester City? Defensively, they're in another crisis when you consider that Josko Gvardiol may struggle to play again for City this season after the club confirmed this week he has fractured his tibia, i.e. his shin bone. The recovery for that can be anything up to 3, 4, 5 months, and well, that takes us down towards the end of the season and indeed makes them a doubt for the World Cup as well at this stage. So that's a real blow for them. And then add to that alongside them that Ruben Dias, leader, one of the players that's been a central figure over the last few seasons for them, he pulled a hamstring against Chelsea here on Sunday. He's out for up to 4 weeks, and all of a sudden they're very thin on the ground when it comes to central defensive recruitments in particular. That's why Max Alain, the youngster's come back from his loan spell at Watford to add some cover. But Nathan Ake and Abdulkadir Kusanov, they're only 2 fit centre-halves, and Ake, we know, can't play twice in a week. They've had to manage his minutes for a long period of time. No sign of John Stones coming back. So all of that makes a January move for Marc Guehi more attractive. Now, he's a player that the club clearly like. It's a player they've been tracking. I think we all thought he would end up at Liverpool in the summer. When that fell through, it meant that Marc Guehi, really the ball's very much in his court, because although Crystal Palace are bracing themselves for more interest this month, here's a player who could wait until the end of the season when he can command pretty much whatever wage he would like, given the size of the clubs around Europe and in the Premier League that are looking at him. Or potentially Manchester City might be able to make him an offer that is too attractive to turn down this month, and he'd be potentially a really impressive recruit at this time of year, especially when you consider he's homegrown as well. That's something that City really do have to monitor, especially when you consider what Pep said about John Stones yesterday as well, essentially saying, when he was questioned about whether he might get a new contract in the summer, the answer will lie in how much he's been able to play for us over the last 2 seasons. Well, the answer to that question, it might be slightly cryptic, is not very much. That would suggest that maybe Stones is going to be allowed to leave, or there's an admission that they won't be able to get him back to fitness and leave, and therefore Marc Guehi becomes even more attractive. So for Manchester City, although Pep said to me when I asked him yesterday that it's not going to be the same exceptional spend that we saw a year ago when they spent upwards of £150 million, they are looking into the market. It is an option. They won't be forced there. He's happy with his squad, but they could do business, and someone like Guehi represents the potential value for money they're looking for, especially when you consider that similarly we're expecting Antoine Semenyo's move to be completed either tomorrow or certainly before Friday, when that £65 million release clause expires.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Ben. I mean, guys, this makes kind of sense for Manchester City potentially. It makes great sense for Crystal Palace in terms of the monetary value. But does it make sense for Crystal Palace to lose their skipper at this time? And does it make sense for him to go?
Well,
Discuss.
Marc Guehi is an absolute professional, as we saw last summer. One of the goals we just showed there, I think, was the day before deadline day, scoring at Aston Villa. We know he's a very religious man, and he always thinks everything happens for a reason. So he's obviously relaxed. And let's be honest as well, he'll have a number of options in the summer. When he was on England duty, I asked him about his situation. He said he's extremely calm. And I think he is. I think that's the absolute truth. We'll get more on the Crystal Palace side later with James Savundra, I know. It was interesting Oliver Glasner didn't completely shut it out. And we know Oliver Glasner is the most ambitious manager Palace have probably ever had. And you, Roy Hodgson, if you're watching. He's always watching. But for me, for Manchester City, back to City, it's highly important. They're two huge losses from the weekend, those two defensive injuries. Massive for City.
I think there's predicaments for both Marc Guehi and Palace, as you alluded to in your question there. If you look at from Palace's perspective, 6 months left on his contract. This is going to be the last window when they can get any money for him. Now, they've got to weigh that up against the rest of their season. Are they going to be better off having Marc Guehi with them for the rest of the season? The likely answer to that is yes. Yep. They want to finish as high as they can in the Premier League. They want to progress in the Conference League. They want to do a good defence of their FA Cup as well. So with all of those ingredients, if he helps them progress in all of those three competitions, that's going to get revenue to Crystal Palace that may somewhat offset the loss of any transfer fee that they might lose if they keep him. As far as Marc Guehi is concerned, he's kind of holding the cards here. He's in a great position. Someone comes in for him and say Palace agree a fee with a club, he doesn't necessarily have to go anywhere. It's going to be up to him whether he wants to leave because he's under contract. So he can sign a pre-contract agreement with a club outside the Premier League. A European giant maybe, a Real Madrid, a Barcelona or a Bayern Munich, who we understand are interested as well, and then wait until the summer to join them. Or he could just say, I'm going to stay at Palace and then I will assess all of my options because I'll be able to move anywhere for free, be it a European giant or anywhere in the Premier League as well. The Manchester City one is an interesting one because it's understood now that Crystal Palace won't be able to get as much money as perhaps they would have been able to last summer and the summer before. But that's because they know that he's got 6 months left on his contract. However, if a Manchester City were to come in for Marc Guehi, Crystal Palace will look at City and think, you're actually desperate to bring in Marc Guehi, so why don't we use your desperation maybe to get as much money as we can for him? Mm-hmm. Because the difference with that and Liverpool is Liverpool's interest was regardless of who was at the club, regardless of who was injured, they wanted Marc Guehi. The City one appears and feels like to be more of a reactive signing if they were to go for him. Hence why Palace could think, let's raise the price here because we know you're desperate. Yeah,
that's a fascinating scenario then, isn't it? But it feels like he still holds all the cards in this situation. However, he also has to remain fit, right? And also, Pep Guardiola is potentially knocking at your door. So does that make his mind turn and think, actually, in the summer, what happens if Pep Guardiola doesn't want me in the summer? So it does feel like he holds all the cards, but could this be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Marc Guehi? And what does that do to his mind?
Well, also, I don't think Manchester City were totally in there in last summer. We've heard there's interest from Bayern Munich and Vincent Kompany. We know the Liverpool situation. He's got literally every major European club come the end of the season. The only thing which would interest me is that how long will he want it to go on for? Because once the season's over, he's in England mode. He's in World Cup mode with Thomas Tuchel. So does he want to get it sorted now? And also, when it's Pep Guardiola, does your mind change there? As we say, he was extremely relaxed and absolutely, totally professional. I remember deadline day, it was going to happen, then it didn't happen, and his form's been pretty spot on since then. So for me, it's so key for Manchester City if they want to do this.
You're saying hold all the cards. Crystal Palace hold one card because they don't have to accept an offer for him if it was to come in. I know it's not ideal because they're going to lose out on transfer fee, but if someone comes in and says, look, here's 20 million, they don't have to accept it.
And also...
But would they? Would they, Dams? Right at this stage, would they say, actually, he is worth more to us as a player
that's
than...
The way to weigh that up.
We looked at the league table, didn't we, earlier? I thought a few weeks ago, Palace were 5th, and now they're 12th. I mean, they're always 12th. every year after year, they're always 12. Palace fans know this, so I'm not having a go at them. They're always 12. But they were fifth a few weeks ago. That's around, what, £25 million difference?
Say it's every place is £3 million.
So that's something Steve Parish and Oliver Glasner will be weighing up as well.
But also, OK, there's another problem here, is that Oliver Glasner gets linked with every single managerial job that's going. At the moment, there happens to be one going at Manchester United. What if, and this is a big if, Palace fans, and I know you won't thank me for it, but what happens if his manager gets his head turned in this window? Would that make him think, hang on a minute, I need to go? Is he staying because he wants to help Oliver Glasner and Palace?
No, I don't know whether you look at it like that. I think Marc Guehi knows the position that he's in. He knows that he's got 6 months left on his contract. At that stage of a contract, you'd be thinking about, if it was the manager, then you're thinking, do I sign another contract at Crystal Palace if Oliver Glasner decides to stay? So I don't think that would be going through his mind. I mean, we've not heard from him on that front.
No, but would he stay to help him out for the next 6 months? Because, like I say, it's a very attractive offer for him to stay until those 6 months are up, and then he could get even more money.
Oliver Glasner, I think it will be his decision. It will be like, I want to stay because I want to play for Crystal Palace. Or I feel right now is the time for me to go. Crystal Palace will have to have a say in that as well, because it's whether they accept or not a bid for him, because that's the card that they hold still. And what we're talking about, that weighing up of how much he would glean now compared to how much Crystal Palace could potentially make by progressing in all three of those competitions with him in the team. How much difference is that going to be?
I no Palace fan will be celebrating getting 30-odd million for Marc Guehi, because you're losing a captain, a talisman, someone who's already...
But would they celebrate getting nothing for him at the end of the season?
If he's lifting the Conference League, and they've got a much better chance with him. OK. All right, we still haven't ruled out one other team, but Liverpool, obviously, were the ones that potentially almost got him in the summer. Is there anything from them? Are you hearing any rumours, any speculation that he could potentially go there in this window? Because they themselves have issues at the back.
There's always going to be speculation, only because Liverpool were desperate to sign him in the last summer's transfer window. There must be an element of regret at that football club that they had the whole transfer window to try and get this deal done. They waited until deadline day, and then Crystal Palace couldn't find a replacement. Just very finally on this, and on that point, I would say that if Crystal Palace are thinking, right, we will allow him to go, I think they would want to get this done within the first half of this month, simply because Oliver Glasner and Crystal Palace will want to bring in a replacement for him if he was to leave.
Yeah, and they've got to use that money wisely in order to climb up that table, as you said. OK, we will come back to this. Let's stay with Manchester City, though. Antoine Semenyo is set to have this medical tomorrow ahead of his £65 million move. Bournemouth take on Tottenham tonight. We can head to the Vitality with Jeremy Langdon. Good to see you, Jeremy. Semenyo was in great form the last time that these two sides actually met. Does he have to play tonight, do you think?
Well, that's a really interesting question. Of course, as you were saying, he's due in Manchester for a medical tomorrow ahead of this huge move. And Andoni Iraola saying yesterday again that he's going to play him, and giving absolutely no sense that he's under pressure to pull him out. Same against Arsenal at the weekend. Semenyo played. He's in again today, we think, to play. Maybe to start, maybe to come off the bench. We don't quite know. But Bournemouth, of course, need him to play, really, because they're winless in 11 games. He's their leading scorer with 9 goals. And it feels like Bournemouth are playing hardball here. They're losing their star man in January. He's going to be really difficult to replace. And I think they're saying this today. We've got him until January the 10th. That's a deadline for his move to be triggered this month. And we're going to use him right up to that time. And this is his last game potentially for Bournemouth tonight. What a move it's been. He came here 3 years ago from Bristol City for £10 million. He's set to move for 65 after 100 Premier League appearances, 29 goals and 10 assists. But Manchester City are going to be watching on tonight with real interest. And so too Bristol City, who, when they sold Semenyo here 3 years ago for £10 million, put a 20% sell-on clause on any profit. So if Semenyo goes for 65, Bristol City are set to make a huge windfall, maybe £10 or £11, which could turbocharge their promotion campaign. They're 2 points off the playoff places in the Championship. So all very interesting. We wait to see whether Semenyo starts tonight or comes off the bench, but it is going to be goodbye to him. He's been a great player for Bournemouth, and it's his 26th birthday as well. The club wishing him happy birthday on their social media this afternoon, giving no hint, though, that it's going to be goodbye. But I think Bournemouth fans coming here tonight are saying goodbye to a player who's done them so well over the last 3 years. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, we will wait and see. It'll be interesting to get that team news, won't it? Thank you very much indeed, Jeremy. This is a fascinating one because a lot of people are saying, why is he playing? Why would Iraola, risk this? Because if he gets an injury tonight, the deal could be off.
Yeah, but he's asked that question in a news conference yesterday. Antoine Semenyo is still a Bournemouth player. So you wouldn't expect the head coach of Bournemouth to say anything but Antoine Semenyo is in contention to play against Tottenham Hotspur tonight because he's a Bournemouth player. He hasn't been sold to Manchester City yet.
No.
We're hearing that the medical with Manchester City is tomorrow. If everything has been sorted since that news conference yesterday to how we're speaking now to kick off at the Vitality Stadium at 7:30 tonight, then we will see at around 6:15 when the team sheets are announced whether Antoine Semenyo is in that team or not. Yes, a lot of people would be surprised if he does feature, given how close this deal is to happening with Manchester City. But as we've seen before, that we've got a bit of history with this in the last summer's transfer window with...
Well, Eberechi Eze, because when he was close to joining Arsenal, there was talk that he wanted to feature in the Conference League game, but there was so much riding on it financially. The only thing
Oliver Glasner said he would be in the squad and featuring in that game.
Exactly. So there was one thing I was thinking, though, that this was up till January the 10th. So Bournemouth, were well within their rights to play him. And two, speaking to my colleague Mark McAdam about obviously Bournemouth, and he said, don't forget Dean Huijsen joining Bournemouth to Real Madrid. That was done just before the end of the season. Now, he understands there was an agreement between the two clubs. Even if he picked up an injury, Real Madrid would still sign him. I just wonder if there's something maybe in that. We don't know for sure, and it's obviously very late now, but whether Manchester City and Bournemouth have an agreement that, God forbid anything happened to him tonight, he'll probably score, knowing Tottenham's luck. But if he picked up an injury, he will still join Manchester City.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and we don't know for sure whether there is some sort of clause in this already. But the bottom line is the Bournemouth fans will want to say goodbye to him actually tonight because he's been such a soldier for them.
Well, Palace still got to say goodbye to Eberechi Eze, did they not? When he came onto the pitch, didn't he? On that, he was present at that game at the.
Yes, because Gary went to have a word with him.
Game. I'm not sure whether he said goodbye to them or not, but he was present at that game. He was having fun.
But he deserves the right to play tonight. If that's, if he's fit and well and Iraola wants to play him, does he not deserve to get a 60 minutes and then potentially come off to a hero's applause and that's it at Bournemouth?
Well, maybe, but I mean, there's a lot of money riding on this deal, right? So, Andoni Iraola we're well within his rights to say this player is Bournemouth's player. He is going to feature against Tottenham Hotspur because he's a Bournemouth player. Since then, we might have a few more developments between Manchester City and Bournemouth behind the scenes that will then dictate that at 6:15 this evening, we will look at the lineups, and who knows? Yeah, Berry is starting.
But if he hasn't had a medical, the deal can't be signed off, can it?
No, so he's due for his medical tomorrow, as far as we're aware. So,
what are you saying, Darmish? To read between the lines that he could potentially be having a medical right now that we don't know about?
No, I'm not saying any of that at all.
Good. Okay.
Oh, how did you get that? No. We're expecting to have a medical tomorrow.
Yes.
Because he's expected still to be part of the squad for this game.
But
tonight.
if developments happened,
then we'll 6:15.
Yeah.
Set your alarm.
I am setting my alarm. I'm fascinated by it. I just do think, though, in terms of the player himself, this is what he will want because he has done so brilliantly well for Bournemouth, and he would like to help them gain as much.
Yes, but let's face it, it's a dream move for him. If he starts tonight, is he going to go full? It's Christian Romero. You just don't know. It's such a, it's a huge game for Bournemouth. It's a huge game for Tottenham. It's cold. It's icy. How is he?
You basically don't want him to play against Spurs tonight.
I didn't know. I'm not saying it like that. I'm just saying, it's cold tonight. Wrap up. you're going.
And you mentioned Christian Romero.
It could be a game full of tackles, and you know what? Everyone knows what I mean.
Everyone does know what you mean.
One thing I'd say about Bournemouth as well is, if this potentially goes for £65 million, it continues this recent trend at Bournemouth of some of their players coming to Bournemouth for relatively small fees, and not just moving on for big fees, but moving on for big fees to huge, huge clubs. We've seen in the past 2 or 3 years, Dean Howson, as Michael mentioned, they're going to Real Madrid. Zabani's left. Who else have they had? Otara. Solanke's gone to Tottenham in that time. All of these players combined around £300 million worth of incomings. On the face of it, is incredible business. It's brilliant from Bournemouth because they have the knack of being able to recycle, establish themselves as a Premier League team, never be in danger really in recent times of going down. However, the one caveat that you might say is all it can take when you have this many high-profile players leaving the club, if you have one bad transfer window or one window where the scouting doesn't really work, then, you might be looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, and one thing I would also say to that is, when do you stop becoming that club and you aim higher when you've got managers like Antoine Semenyo that could take you to high places, Champions League?
Screen's warm, isn't it?
It is. OK, let's move on. Confirmation of the breaking news we brought you in the last hour. Coventry have confirmed the signing of Roman Esse from the Premier League side Crystal Palace. It's on loan until the end of the season. It's subject to FA, EFL and Premier League clearance, but that deal looks like it'll happen on loan. Right, next, we're live to Turf Moor ahead of Manchester United's trip to Burnley. Who are the winners and losers in the post-Ruben?
Indumentaria, la Kings Limited Gold Edition. Solo hay 50 unidades de todos los equipos y también puede ser vuestra entrando en kingsleague.pro. Así que es los datos a tener en cuenta en cuanto a indumentarias. Gran partido, Gonzalo, Gerard, el que tenemos por delante.
Ojo, ojo, estilo La Bombonera, estadio... de River.
Hostia, más minutos de retraso en el inicio, ¿eh? Ya tenemos lío.
Lo llamó Edo, dibujando la parábola sobre la banda derecha, donde en el vértice del área aparece Nadir. ¡Nadir para adentro! ¡Gol! De Nadir Lua, que tiene una facilidad pasmosa. Encuentra a Pablo, qué balón para Nadir para el segundo. Se tafa de Cócera, es un golazo. ¡Es un golazo! Señoras, señores, bienvenidos al show de Nadir Lua. Pibe.
El mejor.
Vamos
haciendo espionaje, ¿eh?
Vaya mierda ha dado, pibe. Va, ya te puedes ir a la cúpula a comer, va.
Tiene que salir Cócera para entregar hacia el centro. Se la regala Coy, le puede pegar Coy para adentro.
Vaya chicha, nano.
¡Gol! De Porcinos Óscar Coy. Ah, pues sí.
Pero es que, señores,
Que no te lo dije,
Tenemos, ¿cómo lo usamos? Penalti.
penalti.
Será penalti.
Vamos, Cuni.
Puede meter en el partido a Cuni. Jordi para adentro, ¡qué golazo!
¡Guau!
¡Dios!
¡Gol!
Eso, dale.
Vamos con Nadir Lua y con Laura Vizcaíno.
Pues sí, Nadir, 2 goles, victoria y a cuartos, enhorabuena.
Sí, sabíamos que el partido iba a ser muy importante porque veníamos de una muy mala dinámica. El equipo ha estado bien, sufríamos defensivamente y creo que hemos estado muy juntitos y nada, primer objetivo cumplido.
Os espera Science, rival complicado, imagino.
Sí, empatamos contra ellos y shootout perdimos, ha quedado segundo por algo. Nada, concentración, confianza con nosotros mismos y intentar ganar para el sábado estar en el Wizzing.
Os lo veremos mañana, mucha suerte.